Finally, we have come to this knife right here. You can't actually see the blade anywhere on this thing, except right here, so maybe it's an OTF, but there's no tip. These buttons don't really do anything. There's no switches or anything hidden on here. So how do you get the blade out of this thing? Huh? What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. We are now on the final day of Lockdown Knife Week, which extended into Lockdown Knife Weeks. 2 weeks straight of knife videos. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has watched every single video that I've put out over the past 14 days, and I hope you all enjoyed them. Now, as a way to say thank you to everyone who has been using the hashtag, we're going to scroll through every photo that has been posted over the past 2 weeks. We'll pull this up right here and see what's good. Speaking of what's good, that sausage sandwich, whatever that is, that looks really good. Got a Swiss Army knife with that one. We got a cool photo here of the tuna. Shout out to Lucas Burnley. Hope you're doing well, man, if you're watching this video. We have a lot of Spydercos, a lot of Benchmade knives as well, and those are definitely the two most popular. Here are two pretty cool looking blades. I don't know what they are, but they look nice. Oh, the mythical mermaid, dude. You gotta love the mermaid. We got Microtechs, we got Striders. There are a lot of photos here. This one looks pretty interesting right here. Some blade coming from Giant Mouse. I like the look of that one. This photo right here is killer. Everlasting Ember. I featured another one of his photos earlier in the week. Look at the edit on that. Super cool. I like that design a lot. We got some other knives that were featured, like the Yojimbo right here. Ooh, we got some steak right here. I wonder if that's beef or if that's venison. I don't know, but that looks good. Buffalo Trace, good whiskey as well. Oh, there's so many good photos here. I don't even know which one else to pick. There are a lot more photos in here than I had thought, I guess. Ooh, there is a blade right in the middle that I actually have on order, the Arcform Slimfoot. That's not going to be here in time for Lockdown Knife Week, but maybe sometime in the future you guys will see a video on that. That thing is wild. What is that? Gerber Tri-Tip? That thing is wild looking. And that brings us to the end. So thank you to everyone who has used that hashtag. I really enjoyed looking through all of the photos, and you guys are pretty talented out there. It seems like a lot of people who watch my videos also have the same taste in knives, which I appreciate. I could talk knives all day. Now that being said, we're going to be taking a look at this weird thing that was the most recent addition to my collection, actually. I had my eyes on this one for a while because I saw pictures of it and videos of it on the internet, and it's just super interesting. I'm sure that intro might have you kind of scratching your head as well if you've never seen one of these before. I finally handled one of these at Blade Show in Atlanta last summer, and I didn't end up pulling the trigger on buying one because they are offered in so many different varieties. There's different colors and blade grinds and finishes and like shells to this thing, and we'll talk about some more of that in a second. So without further ado, we're taking a look at the Paragon Warlock. Let's first start off with the basics of this thing. This particular Warlock has a two-tone satin and gray finish on its CPM S30V blade. This is a double-edged dagger blade, and in the middle there you will see what they call their sorcerer's grind. This particular model also has sniper gray aluminum handles with the cross, sword, and shield engraving. I'm being specific when I mention these things because there are so many different variants of this knife. It does have a pretty stout pocket clip, which is right and left hand reversible, and the blade is carried in a tip up position, which is kind of hard to tell when you're looking at it. So that brings us to the crazy mechanism of how you actually reveal the blade on this thing. The first thing that your eye is probably drawn to on this knife are the two oversized buttons on the pivots. Like you saw in the beginning, if you press these buttons thinking this is an OTF while squeezing the handles, it doesn't actually do anything. You might be able to feel a little bit of a movement, but that blade is stuck in place. Now the real magic happens when you grip the knife sort of loosely and just use your fingertips to press in those buttons on the pivots. This will push apart the aluminum handles, revealing that blade, and then with a flick of the wrist, you can actually deploy the blade. It locks into place pretty nicely for some real-world use if you actually choose to use a knife like this, and then you put the blade away the same way in reverse. So it doesn't really make sense at first, does it? I don't know. It took me a while to kind of understand the magic behind this thing. Here's a quick look at the box. This is actually coming from Asheville Steel here in America, made in the USA. They're known as Paragon knives. There are quite a few Paragon knives out there. There's also another one with a similar mechanism to this as well, so you can find all that stuff in the description down below. And then on the back here you'll see that this is designed and manufactured here in the US using American steel, America through and through. Asheville Steel has a limited lifetime warranty, and warning, it's sharp. It's definitely sharp, that is true. So let's take a closer look at this thing once again. In the intro there, I gave you a pretty close look at this seam around the edge of the knife. There is some jimping on the back here if you have it in like a reverse grip on each side, and it's very symmetrical, which I like. You have a little bit of jimping right here on each side as well. And then you have a look at the actual back of the blade. Now that you know it's a dagger, it's pretty obvious that it's a dagger. This isn't Sniper Gray like I mentioned, and this version is the Sword Shield Cross. Right here, nice and tiny, you will see Paragon, Asheville Steel. Patent number right there, so no one steals this wicked design, I guess. Now if we take a look at the texturing on these buttons here, you'll also notice that there are 2 screws there. You could, I guess, pop this thing apart, however, I'm definitely not going to do that. The texturing and knurling is pretty aggressive, and that's really important once you see how this knife actually functions. Pocket clip right here, super stout. Like, this thing will definitely rip up your pockets, and when it's riding in your pocket, there's quite a bit of knife that's hanging out there. This is absolutely not a knife that I would carry because it's a dagger blade, and I don't really find any utility in that unless you are stabbing things on the daily. If you're using this as a tactical self-defense knife, then sure, dagger blade's good for that. However, I wanted this thing just simply for the action. So now really close up, if I press on a button while holding it like an OTF, there's no movement at all out of either button. Now you'll notice if I loosen my grip and just press one button while holding the other one steady, this button is sort of pushing the opposite handle scale away. Now if I completely take my hand off the knife and just press these at the same time, it clamshells open just like that. So again, press both buttons simultaneously without putting any pressure on here, and then that blade swings freely on the pivot in there. This version right here has the sword on it. It's stamped USA S30V. It's Sorcerer's Grind. Really interesting. This is actually the version that I wanted and I was kind of holding out for. It's satin and then gray. Very interesting design. Now I haven't actually tested the sharpness of this thing. Actually don't even have any hair on my hand from doing this all week. It's pretty sharp. I wouldn't say crazy hair popping sharp, but it is definitely cuttable. This thing will cut you and it will cut other things very well. Now the action of this blade was definitely something that I had to get used to. When you hand this knife to someone and they eventually realize how it works, most people end up holding this thing like it's a switchblade. You basically use these fingers to sort of brace a knife so it doesn't fly out of your hand. Now that sort of works. It will release the handles just like that, but with this pressure of your palm down here, it's not going to let that blade fully swing closed. So it did take a little bit of finesse to get used to, but eventually if you are just pressing on the two buttons on either side of the pivot, this thing will move completely freely. This entire video could just be this. It has like Balisong fidget factor to it. It's obviously unlike anything else out there, and once you get the hang of it, it is super addicting. It almost sounds like racking the slide of a handgun. I don't know, I love it though. Now if we take a closer look down in here, you'll notice that there are some sort of stop pins in there. That way this knife will not just keep swinging 360. When I'm holding the handles open like this, it does have a stop there and it will not travel further past that. I believe there's also a groove in this blade which will sort of keep it on track. So when you have this thing pressed in like this, it's obviously very loose, just like a Balisong. When it's locked up, it's solid. You can sort of tell that the handles do something. They're not like completely locked up down here on the bottom. And then when you have this thing open, you're actually gripping down on the knife, whether you're using it, stabbing, or doing whatever you're doing with it. And because of that, just like a balisong, it's going to have a really solid lockup. Like if you're holding this knife and actually using it, there is virtually no play at all. Left and right, up and down, that thing is solid in there. Even if you have sort of a loose grip on here, you might get a little bit of a wiggle, but who's gonna use a knife like this? So that's besides the point, because I'm really not using this knife for anything other than that right there. Now that's probably enough ranting for now. Let's bring in some other knives for comparison. Now this is a fairly large knife. It has a blade length of 4 inches. It has a handle length of 5.375 inches. And the overall length is about 9.37 inches. It's also 6.23 ounces, so it's a fairly large and heavy knife. Sort of comparable to something like the ZT that we reviewed the other day. This is a pretty large knife, and this is obviously much larger. Now just like the dagger blade, we have something like the Autocrat right here. Now we're getting a little bit closer to the territory. The proportions of this thing though just make it so much larger than the Autocrat. And since I kept making the comparison to balisongs, here we have the Microtech Tachyon 3, and then we also have the Benchmade 87 over here. So the Warlock is sort of middle ground as far as length goes, and thickness, this is much thicker than anything else here. The 87 is pretty thick, and this thing just is thick with 2 C's. Very cool blade nonetheless. There is really nothing else like it out there on the market right now because they do own that patent. The design of this thing is the reason why I sort of nerd out about things like firearms and sometimes motorcycles and cars and stuff like that. It's just super cool, obviously very, very unique, and it's definitely a cool piece to add to any collection. So that is all that I had for the Paragon Warlock and all of its sorcery, pun completely intended there. This is a super cool knife that I love simply for that right there. Again, it took a little while to get used to, but now it's one of those fidget things similar to a balisong, and I love it. I will leave links down below if you guys want to check out all of the possible variants of this thing, and you can also find more specs, pricing, and anything else you might need down there. So that is all. That's it for Lockdown, a knife week, knife weeks, and I'm tired. I think I'm gonna take this weekend off, and then we'll get into some new content starting early next week. If there's something that you guys want to see while we're still on lockdown, let me know in the comments down below. I'm open to pretty much all ideas as of right now. There's absolutely no shortage on content. However, I want to make the stuff that everyone seems most interested in, and that I'm interested in too. I want to kind of keep my sanity and do fun stuff during this. So that is all that I have for today. If you guys are new to this channel, please consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week, and there's a lot more coming soon. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one.